Anyway, this is me, Oscar Craviotto here, talking today about Kubernetes. Some facts about me. I live in Porvo, and that's for you, Yanni, who's always... there are people who count how many times I say Porvo. They are the only reason why they're here today. I actually support a group of teams in the area of platform engineering and security at Supermetrics. So basically, a couple of things about me. I work at the intersection of technology and people. And by the way, who doesn't, right? I mean, we all work in technology and we think it is all about technology. It's also all about people. And about me, some personal facts. And the last one is probably the most important for this talk, is that I probably spend a lot more time than I'd like to admit caring for my home Kubernetes clusters. And maybe that's the reason why I hope this will be a good time together to discuss and think about it and maybe hear some of your stories too. So first of all, the title with a little review. If you notice, don't say anything yet. We'll go there in a moment. But this is, by the way, not my real cluster. This is just a wallpaper I use in some places. Kubernetes at home for play and learning. And so I'm going to start the first part of this talk thinking about the first couple of lines, home for play and learning, and then we'll go to Kubernetes, which I think is what we know the most here. So some questions about, okay, so this is about home. Is it really all about home? You know, that home is where the heart is. And since this is a little bit about a home lab, what do we mean by it? Well, we mean, really, literally someplace in the house. And so what do we need to think about? We're going to be talking about noise, heat, space, power, network, and cabling, especially if you're going to just cable across the house. And then, of course, that significant other. It might be spouse, it might be your kids, flatmates, maybe even a pet who doesn't like your cluster. So, yes, those are important, and tolerance is the thing. But we won't discriminate. So this is not just going to be about having it at home. Okay, so maybe home is not an option. There are many reasons why, and I will tell about my own story, why it took me some time to get it at home. Maybe you think about other options, co-location, Hessner. A lot of people run things on Hessner. Maybe a friend, a work, an employer that is kind enough to host your lab, maybe. Anyway, as long as it is self-managed, I think we're good. So, this is important. And finally, don't let your house limit your home. So a house is made of walls and beams. A home is built with love and dreams and a few servers, at least for me. So home is where your heart is and where you run your cluster. So let me introduce you to my cluster. Not a lot yet, okay? I know. But that's actually, take note, this is going to come back. This is my cluster, the crowd cluster. So a little bit about things that happen at home when you actually run a cluster. That's actually my home. And this is one of the projects, one of the times that I was actually doing a lot of cabling around and thinking, okay, what can I do this time? This actually was 1 year ago. Actually, a little bit over a year ago. A year, maybe, and 2 months ago. It was the last big thing that I did. I'll tell more about that. It was when I added another network layer, 10 gig, with switches and another router. And I decided to actually put all that cabinet that you saw, that IKEA cabinet that I will talk about in a moment, just to do all that properly, kind of. But, you know, when you have a cluster at home, some of the things you have to consider also, you know, disks are going to go bad. You need to change them. So there are a lot of cables, and you also want to increase the memory of your minor mini servers. So you go chasing in Tori Pistefi a couple of memory, for example, at a good price, because obviously you don't want to spend a lot of money. How do you justify the time and the money? So you try to be economical. And of course, there is often also the often case of having to troubleshoot something that doesn't work exactly. This is one of the many snapshots I have of things that I had. I had a whole collection of them. But anyway, and then you put all these together, and then you start wondering, why? Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to have a home cluster? So let me just briefly tell why I at least think it's important to have a cluster, why I like to have a cluster. First of all, even if you do this for work, or maybe particularly if you do this for work, this is a good question to ask. Whatever the answer is, it starts with play. We all need a little bit of play in our life, right? See, I changed the title of this talk. It was supposed to be fun and learning. But the reason why I changed for fun is because play does not always need to be fun, and it's not always fun. Sometimes play, it's a lot of work. And this is the main reason. Another reason that I thought about the term play is because it's been a lot in my mind lately. It's been a lot lately and from before, and I'm going to talk about 2 books. So this is going to be the less technical part of the talk, okay? The first one is Prime to Perform. This is nothing to do with Kubernetes. This is all about what motivates people to do work. So how do you build the space around work that makes people tick? And the main idea of this book of 2015 was basically to evolve that idea of drive. I don't know if you ever heard of Daniel Pink, the self-determination theory, or even earlier. It's all about what motivates people to do things. And the main thing that motivates people to do things is play. The whole idea of this book was that the closer you are to work, the more motivation you get. So what is the number one thing driving people to do and enjoy what they do? Play. The second purpose, which is a mix about the work itself and identity and then potential. This would be your typical intrinsic motivations. And then there comes the emotional pressure. We all do this for money too. We need to live. And then finally, the worst one is when you don't even know why you're doing what you're doing. So one of the reasons why I thought about having a home lab is play. So think about play is the closest thing, and it has to do with the work itself. Another reason why I thought about play was because many years ago I also read another book, this time by Mitchell Reisnick. You may have heard or not about him, but if you just search for Legal Lab, MIT, or Lifelong Kindergarten Research Group, that's his name. This is the guy who is behind the Scratch language. Anyone knows about the Scratch language? Yeah, so especially if you have kids, it's a great thing to have. But even if you don't, I think even for yourself, it might be a good thing to do. So he actually started to focus and research this particular space of play and how we learn. And so he came around these 4 Ps: projects, passion, peers, and play. So this is another reason why it really made sense to me to have my own lab. Of course, I came with all of this after I had my lab. I needed to justify why I had a lab. But it's still a very good reason. Not less because, as I said, everybody needs a playground. And also because the way we learn and the way we constantly evolve what we learn is by imagination. But imagination alone is not enough. So this is the cycle that Reisnick proposes in his book, and he talks about the Scratch community and how this has actually played out there as well. So imagine you create, so you deploy, you play, you see whether it works, you try with a new project, you share, you go and commit back to kids, you share it in forums like this, you connect with other people who have their things, you reflect on the feedback you get, on the ideas that work or didn't work, and then you go and imagine and try again. And so, in a nutshell, this is why I believe it's really good to have a home lab. Home, Kubernetes for play and learning. So we have tackled the home, the play, and the learning. Let's now focus a little bit on Kubernetes. So the rest of the talk is going to be about my cluster, my tale of Kubernetes. Then the things that you should consider, or maybe have considered, or want to reconsider. And finally, a word of caution, because it's dangerous. I tell you that it's dangerous to have a cluster at home. Many things can go wrong. Many things can happen. Many evenings can be spent in things you didn't plan. All right, so let's try. My journey. You make your own path as you walk. Sorry for the non-Spanish speakers, but this is Machado. Caminante no hay camino, se hace camino al andar. Sorry. So, a tale of a home cluster. This is my story. I didn't start 10 years ago, though I wish I had an NAS already like 20 years ago, 15 years ago. That's all I had, but I won't consider that a lab. So when did I actually start? With the idea earlier, but finally doing something about it 2020. I come back during COVID back to Finland, And then I go, okay, now I'm in Finland. Yeah, now I can do some other things. I was 2 years living in Spain, by the way, so I had lived in here before. So I try. I got my Raspberry Pi, the old one that I had, a Model 3. I tried to run K3S, and I realized one thing. It wasn't going to work, at least not for me. But it gave me a sense. I was in a small flat before moving into a bigger house. I knew what I was going to do whenever I got the space. I was going to get my lab. And that's actually 2021. Guess what happened in 2021? I moved to Porvo. Yes. And in my bigger place, the first thing I did, other than obviously unpacking, is go and order 3 Sync Centers M700 tiny. I'll show you a couple of pictures. And then a little later, a Dell T320. It's actually a towered. So with the space, with the added RAM that I showed in one of the pictures, I started to upgrade my servers to 16 gigs. I started to actually think, okay, now I'm going to have something. So what did I do? I did K0S or K0s, as I'm supposed to say. So K0s was a great initial idea, but it felt so much like, I don't know, the 2010s maybe or earlier. A lot of it was maintaining my Ubuntu that I chose as distribution, doing things with Ansible to get that ready. The tooling around that back then wasn't as great, at least not what I could think I wanted to do with it. But it gave me a sense. I started to deploy some things. I started to make some of the choices that we'll discuss in a moment. Second or third iteration already of my home cluster. 2022, again, a little bit of time. I started adding more components. I also started to think, I don't want to have to go to a monitor every time I need to do a change to my laptop or reinstall some image. So I added some more components like PyKVM, which is a very cool project to have remote access to your machines if they don't have a component directly for you to connect to it, like all clusters in decent data centers have. So I was pretty happy. What did I do this time? I chose Talos. I'll speak a little bit about Talos Linux, which is an API-driven OS. Some of you know it, that actually helps you manage both your Kubernetes as well as the OS in just a single API. But I did that the hard way because I wanted to do that. So I ran a second cluster with K3S and cluster API, and then I deployed Talos and maintain that declaratively, because that's what I do for work, in that Talos environment. I was getting happy. Everything was working, but there was one little tiny detail. Every time I needed to upgrade anything, I needed to resynchronize the storage, because Talos managed through cluster API wipes the whole server. And so I started to think, okay, maybe this is good enough, but this every time I have to do an upgrade, I suffer. So fast forward to 2024, when I did all that thing with the networking that I show in that picture, all those cables, I reiterated again. Now I said Talos, but this time with Omni. Omni is the Talos controller that was just open source a few weeks before that moment I had to do all this, which was obviously during some holiday time. And I went on into the last iteration, which is what I currently have. So this is just to say, this is my story, but it's pretty often that you find that. You iterate, you learn, and you go through the whole cycle. You imagine, you create, you play, you share, you reflect, you imagine again, and then you try again. So, as I said, cluster, here you are. These are actual pictures. These I took on the weekend. You can see now the number of machines has increased. The first 3 with stickers on the left was where my original 3. Then left and right, new ones, the mini PC. The second layer is the PyKVM and a hub that actually allows me to connect to all of these machines from a central connection that is actually on a network, accessible only via cable at home. And then finally, my network layer and the power layer on the bottom. One thing that was important for me was actually to figure out how to keep all of that on a closet and keep the heat out. So one of the things that I did, another summit, I don't remember now, it's my family hated me because they wanted to go play with me, and then I said, no, I have this to do. So I bought this system to actually circulate the air inside that actually starts circulating based on temperature. So the picture in the middle, that's actually the temperature that it actually detects inside of my cabinet. And then 40 will actually run super highest, and with 42 it will actually trigger an alert. So at least I will go and open the doors if everything is burning. Anyway, and then I told you about my Dell tower. So this is the external part of the cluster internally, and hopefully we'll have a moment to show you in more detail. This is what Sidero Omni looks like, the interface with the nodes. This is a snapshot of headlamp and the current amount of resources that I'm using. The version actually upgraded. This was last week. I upgraded over the weekend to 131. And this is just a snapshot of another component, OpenObserve, that I may talk if we have time, because these presentations on 30 minutes need to pack up a lot in not a lot of time. So how do I actually manage my home lab? I have a Trello board with a bunch of things, some of them complete, some of them ideas, some of them are bigger. For example, when I started to review all the options in the space of observability, I went through not the traditional stack, because that's what I know for work, right? So I went and I started to look at what are the things that actually are out there that are a simplification of the observability stack. So I started to look at ClickHouse-based. And there are a lot. Back in the day, for example, I tried querying, which is a very interesting project, a polyglot abstraction on top of multiple APIs to talk to ClickHouse. Lots of stories. I could talk one talk just on that one. And then a few other ones. And then I went, what about now Arrow, Data Fusion, Parquet-based object storage, data layers, data lakehouse that actually are then queried and analyzed. And that's why I went, for example, with OpenObserve. That's another one that I can show in a moment. But this is just an idea. I go, I write. I don't have any PM on my back. I don't have any boss to report to. Well, my wife maybe, that I need to explain how I use my time. But it's the same story. And that's what I do. So this is my story. It's only one story. It's not your story. Because the important thing about home labs is that precisely one of the key things is that you need to make your own story if you're going to have one. Or decide yourself you're not going to have one. So if I was you, what would I have liked to know in advance? Well, first I would have liked to have known that I needed to really think about running it. I didn't find that out until I tried with the Raspberry Pi 3. But anyway, you need to consider things like, do you have kids in the house? How's it going to look if you have a significant other? How hot or not is the space in which you're going to have it? And what about that annoying, you might not notice, right? But I promise somebody will. Or you will yourself. You're watching a movie in the big screen you have close by, and then you say, what's that noise? That's not coming from the movie. Oh yeah, my server. Now the temperature went up. So if not home, where? Alternatives, I already said, family, friends, employer, university, maybe Hessner, any other? Any one of you running somewhere else that I haven't thought about? Let me know. At one point, I was running my Raspberry Pi in the cabinet where you have in Finland often the network, right? That in your apartment, that's not a bad place. It's just maybe not very good for temperature, but. And this, another angle. See, it looks beautiful. Nobody complains. At least if you don't look very close enough, there are not all those cables running. So now you know what to run it on and with. On means basically what hardware. Are you going to run it on some old stuff that you have laying around? Maybe a laptop, maybe a desktop, maybe just some gaming rig that you're not using anymore because you're not gaming anymore. Single board computers, I don't know, Raspberry Pis, but then there's a whole bunch of other components that you could actually run, and we'll look at some options later for Kubernetes that work there. Some used or non-used mini PCs. One of the reasons why I bought one was because it was actually good on power consumption when the electricity was going up, because it had a lot of memory and a lot of threads and CPUs, and so it was more economic in that sense. Maybe some used enterprise servers. Those are complicated. They are power hungry and they are hot, but if you can make a few of them for free, maybe they're a good choice. What do you run them with? All right, by this I mean what platform? Are you going to just focus on virtualization plus the OS plus Kubernetes? That's an option. And what virtualization are you going to choose? Maybe Proxmox, maybe something else. There are not a lot of very open source user-friendly options. You're going to just run some enterprisey. If not virtualization, bare metal, what is the OS you're going to choose? So the one you know the best, maybe Ubuntu, Debian, Fedora, a container focus, maybe Flatcard, which is also a CNCF project. Or are you just kind of the two combined? And that was my choice. Remember, I mentioned Talos, but it's not the only one. There is also K3OS. Never tried, but maybe somebody here wants to start imagining that and start there. So what Kubernetes to run on? I'm not going to go into many details. There are a lot of options. You can think about, K3S, K0S, Micro 8S, Talos, and whatnot. Most of these run with relatively low requirements. Most of them also need small amounts of disk, or at least that's what they claim. In some cases, you need a little more, but it's never too much. Most of them cover most of the architectures that you need. They also allow you to run a single node with your worker and your control plane in one if you don't want to spend too much and you want to start with that and then you try again. And of course, in some cases, you will need to consider, do I want a traditional thing? Do I want something that is actually API-driven like Talos, etc.? But those are things to consider. Of all the lists that I just gave you, for example, all of these 4 are certified Kubernetes distributions. But there is a bunch more. Some of them might be very good. I didn't actually consider in this list some complex, Open Yogurt, and then there is another one that I have it in my notes, but I don't see the notes here. Because those are enterprisey, they are focused on cloud control planes to run on edge. And I think when you have a home lab, you don't want to also run a control plane on the cloud. What key components to consider? And this is when things start getting interesting. Is okay, now you figure out the place, you figure out the hardware, you figure out the Kubernetes distribution. Okay, storage. Do I need to think about that too? So what is it going to be? What is your CSI? What are you going to have? Now remember, this is not something you can have EVS on and just have a storage class ready to use. You need to figure that out yourself. Piraeus, for example, and the Piraeus operator is a great project that I decided to use. It's not the only one. I also at one point used OpenEVS. It also worked okay, but I decided to move away from it. How are you going to replicate data? Are you going to need snapshots? Do you need read-write ones? Many? Do you need NFS, S3? How are you going to back up? That's only storage. Then you go to networking, and then a lot of the similar questions, just the ones that you do for work. You need to repeat yourself here in this case. Of course, you don't need to actually answer all of these questions at once. You might just try and then try again until you figure out what works for you. Load balancing is also something that you need to consider, especially if you're running at home. You need to think, how am I going to actually load balance? I tried MetalLB initially, then I used MetalLB and then Cilium with ARP. Then I settled with Cilium with BGP because I have a whole set of other routers there. But maybe you want to use QVIP. The ingress or gateway, what are you going to use? Again, maybe you want just to go traditional Nginx, Contour, Envoy, whatnot. How are you going to expose your service? How are you going to manage the DNS? Are you going to manage also another DNS with external DNS? And then management. Okay, a lot of questions here. Because we're running out of time, I'm going to just gloss over. You can see them there. A lot of things about how you're going to manage the configuration and then how you're going to secure all of that. If you still want to have a home lab, what are you going to run on top of it? Now, okay, we figure all the interesting part, and now you start thinking, okay, for example, these are some of the things I run: Minio, Crunchy Operator, Dragonfly, ClickHouse, NAT. I have a bunch of things that I do for AI at home, as much as my little devices allowed, or just to proxy into APIs outside, utilities, entertainment, of course, because that's also part of it. And then finally, a word of caution before I show you live my cluster in a moment. This is just a very short list. One thing that I hate about Porvo is the only one. is that I've had at least one power cut every year since I moved there. So by now there's 4 to 5. Yes, I need a UPS, but I haven't had the money to buy one that is big enough to host all of that. So I spent a lot of time recovering my clusters. Every time there is one cut, and then I go again. And because I don't have any management for my Vault, for example, I need to always remember, I need to go unseal Vault. Broken volume replication, that happened. And I spent at least 2 nights, I remember, trying to figure out why. One was after a power cut, and another one was self-inflicted, because I wanted to enable the WireGuard networking node to node in my Talos cluster, because I wanted to expand to the cloud. And I didn't realize that it was not going to be enough to map all the node to node replication volume traffic. And there is also some known issues with Talos on that front. Or, I don't know, Dragonfly ACL configuration that was minor. Kieran with ClickHouse didn't work. I spent I don't know how many weeks trying to make that work, and even rebuilding the OpenTelemetry. And well, as I said, not to count the fact that Talos and Cluster API don't work well together. So that was all from the presentation. And I'm sorry that I had to rush, but we still have 5 minutes because I want to show some things about the cluster. But when I show the cluster, maybe you guys have some questions, some comments. You're still here, right? Oh, yeah, good. So this is actually the cluster. It's live. You can see. If you want to see what I run on the namespaces, these are all my namespaces. The things that I mentioned, if you want to see all of the pods, there might be a couple that failed because I had a failure. I had to call service. Yeah, I'm not kidding. I actually, this is real. I had witnesses here. When I connected, one of my nodes was down. So I called home. I said, my son, are you home? Yeah. Are you close to the cabinet? Yeah. Can you open? Yeah. Is the light red on the middle one, the small one? No. Okay, can you press the button? Yeah. Okay. Perfect, it worked. And so I had the node right here. So this is actually what you would see. There are a lot of other things. I'm happy to show something else here. But for example, I do renovate for Argo CD. For example, if we want to see my Argo CD is here. Yeah, this is a known issue with Argo CD and Kubescape. Especially it's related to a TLS secret in Kubernetes and ignore. This is the one that is, but this is just my app of apps. What can I show you? Casa GitOps. Oops. This is my clustered GitOps. As you can see, this iteration was actually just 3 weeks ago. So for the last year, since I tore down everything and I didn't like the setup I had earlier with GitOps, I've been doing Helm manually, but now not anymore. I have Renovate, and I don't need to go check and check on all the projects. You can see that now Renovate has created a couple of changes here, so I can check. Okay, so that's actually connected. So Renovate, a lot of things are now automated. Still, the work is there. If I want to show Omni, this is what I showed earlier. This is what it looks like. And this is just so that then you know it's live. I'm not just lying. I have those things running. But anyway, we have a couple of minutes maybe for questions. Yes?
If you had to assume how much your current cluster worth in euro, if you want to set it from scratch, how much money would it be?
We can talk right after this. I'm not sure, honestly. What I can tell you is that, for example, I started, as I said, well, Raspberry Pi alone, Lucas has a great history about working with them. But I would say that my first 3 mini PCs that that was maybe 200 each. So only there, maybe I put 800 plus, so around 800 for those 3. But then if I have to count all the other things, I don't know, it goes to a couple of thousand at least, plus the electricity. Yes? I am so far self-hosting. That is, everything is running in my cluster. But there are a few things that I'm investigating and imagining. One, that's the reason why I wanted KubeSpan, because I wanted to actually run workloads with bigger GPUs in the cloud, yet connect privately via WireGuard to my cluster, so that then the control plane would run completely on my side, but I would be able to actually scale out to cloud. There are other very interesting projects that are actually working on that space. That's also good for work. That are looking at, for example, virtual kubelet type of expansion, where you can actually abstract away the implementation of whatever you're running outside your cluster, but from the cluster perspective, you can still manage and define within the cluster. Yeah.
Did you dump cluster API when you switched to Omni, or are you still using cluster?
No, I dumped it. I stopped using cluster API I still have it running on this other K3S. That's still, but it's the only thing that I'm running there. But it's not used. Yeah. Not very expensive, I would say. I have no idea, really. I look at the only time, there was a time when the price went over the roof for a few weeks, a couple of winters ago, and I turned everything down because I didn't have at that point, I was still not convinced that it was working. Now it would be more difficult, but thankfully prices is still good. Yes?
How do you shut down so many devices in a timely manner?
Oh, well, first of all, recently I had to cut it because we installed car charging in our building. So it took me about 15 minutes to do it properly, one at a time, so that then I had to connect one at a time. I didn't want to just switch it off, all of it. But I did it manually. I don't have an automation to do that yet. Yes?
Have you documented your journey, especially related to storage and networking and so on? Because it's very hard to answer all the questions one might have.
There is a presentation. That's all the documentation I have at the moment and my notes. I hope maybe if you push me, I can write an article and put it on my blog.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Yes, if I'm not troubleshooting the replication of those volumes, I may be able to write that article. Yes.
Yeah, so as you said, the play is the best motivation, so maybe an idea for you upgrade to 19-inch rack. You will have to upgrade all the hardware, and this way you will document all your journey.
Yeah, I have iDRAC in the Dell tower. Because I have the Pi KVM. I don't think I need, but yeah, some power management would be nice. Probably one thing that I forgot to say about this, my own journey, is that I don't work directly on my day-to-day building these things. I support a bunch of teams that do this, and this is one way in which I keep myself sharp and up to date with everything that is happening.
Okay, I think we're over.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.